Wisdom, wisdom, that's the test. Which rival wisdom team is best? You decide. Let's discuss it with Grandpa Lou. Hold on.
Team 29 Influence wisely. Quote definitions, biographical context and synergy analysis. ReplaceHate.org, motivationaleducation.com, guidealife.com. Quote 29.1. The fruit derived from labor is the sweetest of pleasures. Luc de Clapier, Marquis de Vauvenargues 1715 to 1747. Quote definition. Among all available pleasures, the satisfaction earned through genuine effort, the fruit of labor, is uniquely and incomparably sweet. Not because other pleasures are false, but because the earned pleasure carries within it the full meaning of the effort that produced it. The difficulty overcome, the capability developed, the commitment sustained. Unearned pleasure is pleasant. Earned pleasure is fulfilling. Quote application. The work of replacing hate is genuinely laborious. It requires sustained effort over long periods with often invisible results. Vauvenargues' principle is both the motivation and the reward. The fruit of this particular labor, when it comes, the mind genuinely changed, the community genuinely kinder, the hatred genuinely replaced, will be the sweetest of pleasures precisely because of what it cost to grow it. Luc de Clapier, Marquis de Vauvenargues, was born in 1715 in Aix-en-Provence, France, into an old noble family. He pursued a military career, served in the disastrous Italian campaign of 1733 and the Bohemian campaign of 1741–42, during which he suffered severe illness that permanently damaged his health, and retired from the army at 29, blind in one eye, disfigured by frostbite, and with few years left to live. He moved to Paris, befriended Voltaire, and in the remaining 3 years of his life produced his Reflections and Maxims, a collection of aphorisms and moral essays that Voltaire praised as showing the natural genius of a mind too little known. He died at 32. His observation about earned pleasure carrying unique sweetness came from a man who had labored against serious physical suffering to produce a small but genuinely excellent body of work, and whose brief experience of creative fulfillment before his death was the fruit he had earned through exactly the difficulty he described. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Recognize earned satisfaction as categorically different from, and more fulfilling than, pleasures received without effort, because the effort is part of what makes the fruit sweet. 2. Find motivation in the specific sweetness that only labor's fruit provides, particularly during the difficult middle of any significant undertaking when the fruit is not yet visible. 3. Apply Vauvenargues' principle to the mission. The moments of genuine transformation, the mind actually changed, the community actually kinder, will taste as sweet as they do because of the labor that produced them.
Quote 29.2. True change takes place in the imagination. Thomas More, 1779 to 1852. Quote definition. Genuine, lasting change in the world begins not in external conditions, institutional reforms, or political arrangements, but in the imagination, the interior capacity to envision something genuinely different from what currently exists. Before anything is built, created, or transformed, it must first be imagined, and the quality of imagination sets the ceiling of what change can actually achieve. Quote application. The mission of replacing hate with wisdom is, at its deepest level, a work of imagination, inviting people to imagine a world in which others' dignity is as real and as important as their own, in which community is built on genuine understanding rather than tribal exclusion, in which wisdom is more widely shared than it currently is. True change begins exactly there, in imaginations that the mission's work is designed to engage and expand. Thomas More was born in 1779 in Dublin, the son of a Catholic grocer, and became the most celebrated Irish poet of his era, the Bard of Erin, author of Irish melodies whose songs were sung across the English-speaking world. He appears in Team 11 as well, where his observation about glory and obscurity anchored the legacy layer of that framework. His observation that true change takes place in the imagination reflects both his romantic poetic philosophy, which held that the imaginative faculty was the highest human capacity, and his political conviction that Irish cultural and national identity would be restored not through military force, but through the imaginative recovery of what had been suppressed. His Irish melodies were not merely entertainment. They were an act of political imagination, keeping alive in the Irish imagination a vision of identity and dignity that colonial reality was systematically denying. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Invest in the quality of imagination, both your own and others, as the most fundamental form of investment in genuine change, because nothing different is built until it is first genuinely imagined. 2. Recognize that the work of expanding what people can imagine about themselves, about others, about what communities could be, is prior to and more fundamental than any external reform. 3. Apply Moore's principle to the mission. Every story told, every wisdom principle shared, every genuine human connection formed is an expansion of what the imagination can hold, and therefore an expansion of what change can actually achieve.
Quote 29.3. Persuasion is often more effectual than force. Aesop 621 to 564 BC. Quote definition. The outcomes achieved through genuine persuasion, honest argument, appealing stories, patient relationship building, are often more complete, more durable, and more extensive than the outcomes achieved through compulsion. Force produces compliance that reverses when the force is removed. Persuasion produces genuine agreement that holds because it was genuinely won. Quote application. This is the methodological foundation of the entire wisdom influence mission. The work of replacing hate cannot be forced, it must be persuaded. Every fable Aesop told, every wisdom quote carefully chosen, every story of human dignity genuinely shared is persuasion at work, more effectual in the long run than any compulsion that produces the appearance of change while the underlying conviction remains unchanged. Aesop was a slave from ancient Greece, probably from the 6th century BC, whose biographical details are largely legendary. Ancient sources place his birth variously in Thrace, Phrygia, Ethiopia, or Samos, and his death is said to have been at Delphi, where he was thrown from a cliff after offending the locals. What is historically certain is that collections of fables attributed to him were among the most widely read texts in antiquity and have remained in continuous circulation ever since. The Tortoise and the Hare, the Fox and the Grapes, the Boy Who Cried Wolf, the Wind and the Sun, all Aesop. His fables work precisely through the persuasion he prescribes. They do not tell you what to conclude, they tell you a story that leads you to conclude it yourself, which is precisely why the conclusion sticks. He had understood that genuine persuasion works with the human desire to reach conclusions through one's own reasoning rather than against it, and that the story was the most effective vehicle ever invented for that kind of influence. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Choose the methods of genuine persuasion, honest argument, story, patient relationship, over the methods of compulsion whenever the goal is lasting change rather than temporary compliance. 2. Invest in the craft of persuasion, understanding what moves people, what stories resonate, what arguments engage, as the most effective available instrument of genuine influence. 3. Apply Aesop's principle to the mission. Every piece of content, every story, every wisdom quote is persuasion at work, and persuasion, patiently applied, is often more effectual than any force available.
Quote 29.4. Genius is the recovery of childhood at will. Arthur Rimbaud 1854 to 1891. Quote definition. The genius-level creative and perceptual capacity is not a mysterious gift bestowed on a few but the deliberate recovery of the openness, wonder, and freshness of perception that children possess naturally and that adults lose through habit, convention, and the accumulated deadening of familiarity. The genius can access at will what the child experiences automatically, seeing the world as genuinely new rather than as what it has always been. Quote application. The wisdom work of replacing hate requires exactly this recovery, the willingness to see other human beings as genuinely new rather than through the deadened lens of accumulated stereotype. The genius of genuine kindness is the ability to approach each person with the freshness of a child who has not yet learned whom to dismiss. Rimbaud's principle is both a description of creative genius and a prescription for the perceptual renewal that wisdom requires. Jean-Nicolas Arthur Rimbaud was born in 1854 in Charleville, Ardennes, France, showed extraordinary academic ability from early childhood, wrote his most important poetry between the ages of 15 and 21, and then, in one of the most dramatic renunciations in literary history, stopped writing entirely, abandoned Europe, and spent the last decade of his life as a trader and gun runner in East Africa. His A Season in Hell and Illuminations, written before his 21st birthday, are among the most original and most influential works of French poetry, pioneering the visionary style and radical dissolution of conventional poetic form that influenced symbolism, surrealism, and virtually every subsequent avant-garde movement in Western literature. He died at 37 of cancer, having never written another line of poetry after 21. His observation about genius as the recovery of childhood perception reflects both his own experience of seeing the world with an undeadened freshness that produced revolutionary art and his understanding that this capacity, so natural in children, had to be deliberately recovered in adults who had let it atrophy through the familiarity that experience accumulates. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Deliberately practice the recovery of fresh perception, approaching people, situations, and ideas as genuinely new rather than through the deadened lens of what they have always seemed to be. 2. Recognize that the accumulated familiarity that makes adults efficient also makes them less perceptive, and that genius consists in recovering what that efficiency costs. 3. Apply Rimbaud's principle to the work of replacing prejudice. The child's openness to each new person as genuinely new is precisely the perceptual recovery that wisdom education is designed to enable.
Quote 29.5 Speak softly. Carry a big stick and you'll go far. Theodore Roosevelt 1858 to 1919. Quote definition. Effective influence combines two qualities, the soft speech of diplomatic, respectful, non-threatening communication, and the substantial capability. The big stick. That gives that soft speech the credibility that makes it effective. Either alone is insufficient. Soft speech without capability is weakness that others feel free to disregard. Capability without soft speech is aggression that provokes unnecessary resistance. Together, they constitute genuine authority. Quote application. For the Wisdom Influence mission, the soft speech is the tone of genuine respect, patience, and non-coercive engagement with people where they are. The big stick is the 2,500 years of accumulated human wisdom, the evidence of what hatred costs and what kindness produces, the moral authority of the mission's genuine commitment to human dignity. Speak softly, with patience and respect, backed by the substantial weight of genuine wisdom. Theodore Roosevelt was born in 1858 in New York City, a sickly child who built himself into one of the most physically vigorous presidents in American history through deliberate, sustained effort, boxing, wrestling, rowing, ranching in the Badlands, leading the Rough Riders up San Juan Hill. He served as the 26th president from 1901 to 1909, won the Nobel Peace Prize for mediating the Russo-Japanese War, established the national park system, busted trusts, and regulated railroad rates, all while writing 35 books and maintaining one of the most voluminous correspondences in presidential history. He attributed the West African proverb, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," to his foreign policy philosophy, but its wisdom applies directly to every context of genuine influence, the combination of respectful engagement and substantive capability that produces lasting results rather than merely temporary compliance. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Develop both dimensions, the soft speech of genuine respect and patient engagement, and the big stick of real knowledge, real skill, and real moral authority, because each amplifies the other and neither alone is sufficient. 2. Lead with the soft speech rather than the stick. Genuine respect and patience are more effective as the primary mode of engagement, with capability visible as support rather than threat. 3. Apply Roosevelt's formula to the mission. Speak softly, with patience, genuine respect, and honest engagement, backed by the substantial weight of accumulated wisdom that gives the softness its credibility.
Quote 29.6. Most mothers are instinctive philosophers. Harriet Beecher Stowe 1811 to 1896. Quote definition. the practical wisdom required for genuine mothering, understanding human development, managing competing needs, navigating complex relationships, making moral decisions daily under uncertainty, constitutes a genuine philosophical practice. Most mothers develop this wisdom instinctively through the demands of the work itself without calling it philosophy, but philosophy is precisely what it is. Quote application. This observation validates the wisdom available in ordinary human experience, particularly the experience of caregiving, relationship, and the daily management of human development. The mission of making America wiser and kinder does not draw exclusively on the wisdom of formally educated philosophers. It draws on the instinctive philosophy of everyone who has genuinely cared for and attended to the development of another human being. Harriet Beecher Stowe was born in 1811 in Litchfield, Connecticut, the daughter of the famous Calvinist minister Lyman Beecher and the sister of Henry Ward Beecher. She married a theology professor, raised 7 children, and in 1852 published Uncle Tom's Cabin, the novel that Abraham Lincoln reportedly greeted her as the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war. The novel sold 300,000 copies in its first year in America and 1 million in Britain, proportionally the best-selling novel of the century, and its combination of vivid human stories and moral argument against slavery changed what many Americans could imagine about enslaved people by making them real in readers' imaginations. Her observation about mothers as instinctive philosophers came from her own experience of the intellectual and moral demands of raising children, combined with her literary career's sustained attention to the philosophical dimensions of ordinary domestic life that the formal philosophical tradition had largely ignored. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Recognize and honor the genuine practical wisdom available in caregiving, relationship, and the daily navigation of human development. Philosophy is not confined to formal academic contexts. 2. Draw on the instinctive wisdom available in ordinary human experience, particularly the experience of genuine care and responsibility for others' development, as a legitimate and often superior source of insight. 3. Apply Stowe's validation to the mission's sources. The wisdom these 52 teams contain is not only the product of formally educated philosophers but of everyone across 2,500 years who attended carefully to what human beings need to flourish.
Quote 29.7. Courtesy is the one coin you can never have too much of or be stingy with. John Wanamaker, 1838-1922. Quote definition. Courtesy, the genuine respect, consideration, and care for others' dignity expressed in daily interaction, is unlike other resources in that it does not diminish through use. You cannot exhaust it by giving it freely, and withholding it produces no benefit. It is the one coin that increases in value through circulation rather than through hoarding, and that the person who gives it most generously possesses most abundantly. Quote application. For the work of replacing hate with wisdom, courtesy is the medium through which every interaction is conducted. The daily practice of genuine respect that makes the larger vision of human dignity concrete in ordinary exchanges. Wanamaker's coin metaphor is the permission to give it without calculation. The more freely courtesy circulates, the richer everyone in the exchange becomes, and no one is ever diminished by having given too much of it. John Wanamaker was born in 1838 in Philadelphia and built one of the first modern department stores, Wanamaker's, whose practices of fixed prices, return policies, and advertising transformed American retail, and earned him the unofficial title of the father of modern advertising. He served as Postmaster General under President Benjamin Harrison, was a major philanthropist, a committed Sunday school teacher and organizer, and a man whose entire business career was built on the conviction that treating customers, employees, and competitors with genuine respect was not merely the ethical choice but the most effective business strategy. His observation about courtesy as the inexhaustible coin reflects his lifetime of observation that courtesy generated loyalty, trust, and repeat business in ways that no amount of price competition could replicate, and that its supply was genuinely unlimited for anyone willing to spend it freely. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Give courtesy freely and consistently, in every interaction with everyone, without calculation of whether it is deserved or will be reciprocated, because its supply is genuinely inexhaustible. 2. Recognize that the withholding of courtesy, the strategic rationing of basic respect, produces no benefit and actively diminishes the quality of every relationship and community it inhabits. 3. Apply Wanamaker's coin to the mission. Conduct every interaction with genuine courtesy, not as a performance of niceness, but as the daily practice of the human dignity the mission exists to promote.
Quote 29.8. From the errors of others, a wise man corrects his own. Publilius Cyrus 85 to 45 BC. Quote definition. The wise person does not require personal experience of every mistake to learn from it. Others' errors, observed and studied honestly, provide the same lesson that personal experience delivers at a fraction of the cost. The willingness to learn from others' mistakes rather than insisting on making one's own is both the most efficient and the most humble available approach to self-correction. Quote application. The entire premise of sharing 2,500 years of accumulated human wisdom is Publilius Cyrus's principle at civilizational scale. The errors others have already made and learned from are freely available to anyone willing to study them. The mission of wisdom education is specifically the transmission of these corrections, the chance to correct one's own thinking and behavior from the errors that history has already paid the full tuition on. Publilius Cyrus was a Syrian-born slave brought to Rome who so impressed his master with his intelligence and wit that he was educated and eventually freed. He became a celebrated writer of mimes, short dramatic sketches performed at popular festivals, and his collection of moral maxims, distilled from those works, was used as a school text in Rome and remained in use as an educational text throughout the medieval period. He was thus a formerly enslaved person whose wisdom became the curriculum through which Roman children were educated, one of the more remarkable biographical arcs in the collection. His maxims are characteristically compressed, practical, and drawn from close observation of how people actually behave rather than how they ideally should. The observation about correcting from others' errors comes from someone who'd spent his career writing about the full range of human folly and had concluded that the distinguishing mark of wisdom was the ability to learn without requiring personal catastrophe as the teacher. This quote specifically encourages individuals to 1. Actively seek out and study others' errors, in history, in literature, in the lives of people around you, as the most cost-effective curriculum for self-correction available. 2. Develop the humility and attentiveness required to learn from observed mistakes rather than insisting that personal experience is the only legitimate teacher. 3. Apply Publilius Cyrus's principle to the mission directly. The 2,500 years of human wisdom in these 52 teams represent exactly the corrections of others' errors that are available to everyone willing to receive them, the chance to be wiser without having paid all the tuition personally.
How they work together as a unified philosophy to replace hate with motivational education to guide a life.com. The Influence Wisely Framework. Motivation Layer. Earned sweetness and imagination as changes engine. Quotes 1-2. Vauvenargues. Establish the sweetness of earned fruit as the deepest available motivation. The pleasure that only genuine labor produces, which is what makes sustained influence work genuinely rewarding. More. Reveal where genuine change actually begins, in the imagination, making the expansion of what people can envision the primary work of all genuine influence. Together, the motivation and the mechanism of wise influence. Vauvenargues ensures that the work of influence is sustained by genuine satisfaction rather than mere obligation. The fruit of real labor is uniquely sweet. More ensures that the influence is aimed at the right target, not behavior compliance but imaginative expansion, because true change takes place in the imagination before it appears anywhere else. Method Layer. Persuasion over force and childlike fresh vision. Quotes 3-4. Aesop. Establish persuasion as the primary method, more effectual than force, producing durable change rather than temporary compliance, making story, honest argument, and patient relationship the instruments of choice. Rimbaud. Provide the perceptual quality that makes persuasion genuinely effective. The recovery of childlike freshness that sees people and situations as genuinely new rather than through the deadened lens of accumulated stereotype. Together, the method and the perception of wise influence. Aesop establishes that the persuasion method works better than force, and that the most effective persuasion works through story and genuine engagement rather than argument and pressure. Rimbaud ensures that the persuader brings the fresh perception that makes genuine engagement possible, seeing the person being persuaded as genuinely new rather than as a predetermined type. Persuade through fresh eyes. Style Layer. Soft speech with strength and instinctive wisdom. Quotes 5-6. Roosevelt. provide the complete formula for effective influence. Soft speech combined with genuine capability, making the combination of respectful engagement and substantive authority the operating style of wise influence. Stowe. Validate the full range of wisdom sources available to the wise influencer, including the instinctive philosophy of caregiving and ordinary human experience, ensuring that influence draws on the complete depth of human wisdom, not only its formally credentialed forms. Together, the style and the sources of wise influence. Roosevelt's formula, speak softly, carry a big stick, describes the operating posture, respectful and patient in manner, backed by genuine substance and authority. Stowe's validation ensures that the wisdom carried as the big stick includes the instinctive philosophy of practical human experience alongside the formally educated variety. Speak with genuine respect, backed by the full depth of human wisdom. Practice layer, courtesy as inexhaustible coin and errors as free tuition. Quote 7-8. Wanamaker, provide the daily practice of wise influence. Courtesy given freely, never hoarded, never exhausted, as the medium through which every interaction expresses the human dignity the mission exists to promote. Publilius Cyrus, close the framework with the most efficient available learning strategy, correcting from others' errors rather than requiring personal catastrophe as the teacher, making the 2,500 years of accumulated wisdom freely available as self-correction without personal tuition. Together, the daily practice and the learning discipline of wise influence. Wanamaker's courtesy is the texture of every interaction, the inexhaustible coin that circulates freely and enriches everyone it touches. Publilius Cyrus's wisdom is the learning strategy that makes the wise influencer continuously better, drawing on others' errors as free tuition, accumulating the self-corrections that experience would otherwise cost dearly. Influence daily through courtesy, improve continuously through others' wisdom.
Free Easy Extra Advantage Math, spelling and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free Easy Math Wisdom Workbooks with octo repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free Easy Alpha Cipher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this cipher quote of encouragement using either our Learning to Spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music. Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And, if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily, so change your shirt and change the world. Social equalities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms. Like pretty witty baby onesies and baby tees that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. I think, therefore I think tees I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equalities help make us all wiser and kinder with blatantly subliminal messages promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults. You can clothe a whole family, city or state. Join the 52 of 8 today.